You believe in taking the fight to the enemy and giving them a reason to be afraid, giving them a reason to run away. You focus on drawing or driving the zombie horde away from the main group of humans so that they can complete the missions that will hopefully result in a human victory. You are a hunter. Alright, you scum, suit up! If you have not already watched the Units, Roles, and Loadouts primer, the general advice video, and pretty much all of the other loadout videos, I recommend pausing this video and going and watching them now because I will be building on most of those in this video. Now, like Recon, Hunter is more of a strategic concept in my mind as opposed to something that really targets an individual's loadout. There are, of course, loadouts that I recommend for people who are truly dedicated to the concept of hunting, either in individuals or smaller units, and I'm going to refer to those as skirmishers. And I will go into what I recommend for skirmisher loadouts later on, but I'm first going to talk about the concept of hunters and how I would use them and why they are incredibly valuable. The role of hunter is to actively engage the zombies so that the zombies cannot actively interfere with the humans who are trying to complete the missions. In most HVZs, the reason the humans end up failing ultimately and the zombies end up winning the game overall is the humans were not able to complete enough of the individual missions. Generally, those missions provide some sort of either additional information, sometimes cures, tools, special weapons, various things that the humans need to acquire in order to have enough of an advantage to ultimately win the game. And if the zombies are able to organize and muster well enough to attack the humans while they're trying to complete those missions, or just make it so the humans are unable to complete those missions or drive them off, then the humans are almost certainly going to lose. Hunters actively attack the zombies to prevent the zombies from being able to do that. Now, if your goal is to survive to the end as a human, hunter is almost certainly not the role for you because the mortality rate of hunters is incredibly high because you are actively seeking out and engaging enemies that you can't actually fully eliminate. There will always be more zombies, and you may eventually run out of ammo or get overrun. So keep in mind, hunter is a very dangerous role, which is why you don't see it as often as you really need to. Zombies are a very predatory role because you always just respawn. You don't have to worry about, oh, I've been taken out, I made a mistake, and now I'm done. Whereas humans, you only get the one mistake, and then you are a zombie for the rest of the game. And so most humans play a very defensive game, and that's why you see that large blob of amorphous blob of humans milling about in a very defensive role, getting to the mission, trying to form a defensive formation. And humans are very good at that because we have so much firepower. But that's why game designers often put in super zombies that nullify that firepower. Either they're tanks that can never truly be stopped, or they are respawn points where the closer they are to you when they tag, suddenly they became a respawn point and zombies just keep pouring off of them. Things like that make it very difficult, if not completely impossible, to hold a fixed location against them. The only defense against that is to drive those zombies away or draw those zombies away, but that requires offensive and aggressive action, and that's where the hunters come in. They actively engage the zombies, they actively drive them off or draw them off. In the case of like End War 2019, and I believe previous years, they had a tank unit, tank super zombie, where when you tagged them, they were stunned for a grand total of 5 seconds, and then they got to start moving again. And they moved towards whoever had hit them last. And so if you're in a defensive position, you tag the super, he stops, counts to 5, and then starts moving again. And you can tag him again, but he will stop for 5 seconds, and just keep taking another step towards you. Every time you tag him, they at least get to take one step. And so it makes it pretty much impossible to hold a fixed location. Unless you have people who are actively engaging them, like sharpshooters or omegas, or hunters who will move off, hit the tank, so the tank now has to follow them, and then take the tank away from the rest of the humans, or will actively seek out those tanks and engage them so that they have to follow them, so that the tank never gets to the mission squad or the command columns, the units that are heading towards the objectives to complete them, to keep the tanks from ever being able to harass them or to draw those respawn zombies off or to drive them off, or to just scatter the horde so it's never able to organize into a large enough horde to threaten those larger command columns in the event that there aren't supers of any kind. You just need to keep those mission-oriented units from being attacked and harassed by the zombies so that they can complete the missions so that the humans will have an active chance at winning. But keep in mind, there's a real good chance you're going to get tagged eventually. You'll get overrun, you'll have drawn too many zombies off, or you'll just eventually run out of ammunition. And that's why when I talk about the skirmisher loadouts, they're going to be a little in between the various loadouts and have elements of all of them, because you're often going to be in a position where, as a skirmisher, you need to be able to fill all of the various roles. Maybe not as well as a dedicated loadout would, but well enough to service, to be able to complete that role well enough to last long enough to save the rest of the human race. You may end up going down, but the humans may end up winning as a result of your actions. So let's take a look at some skirmisher loadouts that I recommend. Now I'm going to be going over 3 different skirmisher loadouts, light, medium, and heavy, very similar to the infantry loadouts, but with subtle differences that I believe are important enough to bring up. But as with any of the infantry loadouts, since there are times when you may end up holding the line, I am going to recommend having a knee pad so that you can take a knee when changing mags or clearing jams or what have you. Also, battle belt in your dump pouch, as within every loadout, for socks or for MacGuffins or for whatever else. Just a good idea to have. Up first we have light, and for me, light skirmishers are going to be that blurry middle ground between light infantry and recon, because there's a really good chance you're going to be your skirmisher unit or your hunter's unit's recon. So you'll be the one who will be running out to scout areas, look around corners, find where the horde is currently mustering, and report back to your hunter unit. And so you still need to have the firepower to be able to engage when your unit engages and to be able to keep up with the rest of your unit and be an asset on the actual field of battle. But you also need to be light enough to be able to move quickly and quietly and all of that. Again, I'm kind of recommending things like Alpha Trooper, pump action, springers, but a fair number of magazines. You don't need quite as many because pump action springers are a lower rate of fire and you're a little more likely to really make your shots count. So I would recommend at least 4, probably going a little higher for any of your skirmisher units. A few more magazines because you know you're going to be heavily engaged and you will probably go through that much ammo. I am going to recommend probably a heavier secondary, again, for that when you need the extra firepower, which you are quite likely to do as a skirmisher. Also, a blaster type that I haven't recommended anywhere up to this point, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend it in skirmishers, are shotguns. Things that fire more round at once. Either shotgun pistols or full shotguns, you know, a rough cut on a back holster, a sledge fire on a lower back holster, shotgun pistols, something along those lines, just because that's a lot of firepower in a small package that can make a huge difference when you're heavily engaged, because you might get lucky and hit more than one target at once. I have seen that happen and it's fabulous. So that's my recommendations for light skirmishers. Let's take a look at medium. A good medium skirmisher loadout is going to be a variant on medium infantry, but one that dual wields. So I'm going to recommend 2 semi-automatic magazine-fed blasters of some kind, generally, you know, strifes or whatever variant you prefer, because it gives you the controllable firepower of semi-auto, which means you're going to take your shots and make them count, but you've got twice as much. So you are able to engage multiple targets at once, and that's something that's very valuable on the skirmisher loadout. Now, this might be a good spot where you would use half-dart pistols instead. Something like, you know, a desert pigeon or turkeys or something like that. Something that's semi-auto but uses half-darts, so that you could then carry something like a spamf and be able to fill that role of sharpshooter and not have to have multiple types of ammunition. So that's another option. You'd also then be able to carry a lot more ammo in a much smaller space, and that is incredibly valuable for a medium skirmisher because you're firing potentially twice as much. So more ammunition in a smaller space without making it too much more cumbersome definitely would be a good idea for medium skirmishers. Let's take a look at heavy. For heavy skirmisher, I'm going to recommend some variety of select fire SMG, because you are now blurring the lines between medium infantry and heavy infantry. And so select fire is great in this role because you can have the controllability of semi-automatic, which is better on ammo consumption, which is very important for skirmishers because you are going to be in the thick of it but also allows you to switch over to full auto and provide suppressing fire or covering fire for your unit for whatever reason, horde busting or something along those lines. And so you are going to want to carry a lot more ammo. I would actually recommend at least 8 magazines. I don't have a vest set up for that. I wouldn't recommend a heavy vest because, again, you're going to want to be mobile because your unit's going to be on the move. So something like a select fire blaster would be great. Percy's would also be a good option in my opinion. It's got that SMG feel, can have a fairly controllable rate of fire, but if you have it cranked up, you can really hose with one of those things. As with the heavy, I am going to recommend a heavy sidearm so that you can switch to dual wielding like the mediums can, but have one of them be potentially full auto. So, picking your shots when necessary and then just hosing with this, and then picking your shots and hosing with this gives you that really a lot of firepower in a fairly compact loadout. So, as with the other skirmisher loadouts, I am going to recommend something in a shotgun if you really like, or something that gives you sharpshooter capability, just so that you can diversify, fill whatever role needs to be filled. And obviously, if supers require special ammo type, all skirmisher loadouts should be carrying something that can take them out, whether it be mega, whether it be rockets, or just socks. You should always be carrying socks, and that usually works. And just be very aware, have your socks where you can easily get to them should you need to, because again, you're going to be engaging the enemy, and you're intentionally drawing the supers out. So you're going to want to be prepared to deal with them. Now you may have noticed that all of these loadouts are heavier variants of other loadouts I've already talked about, and that is because skirmishers are probably going to be filling all of those various roles, but in a more aggressive style, and so they need to be a little bit more heavily armed. They need more ammunition, they need to have possibly a greater variety in types of firepower, but also just having more firepower because they're going to be stuck in for most of the game. Now, I generally would not recommend individual hunters because you're almost certainly going to be taken out unless you're really, really good at it. If you are, then go for it. I look forward to hearing the exploits. But I would generally recommend at least 2-man teams so that you can cover each other's backs and so that one of you can cover while the other is reloading. I would personally really recommend 4-man teams because a 4-man team with that kind of firepower is going to be a lot more functional and versatile than most people might think, especially if they're actually well trained and know what they're doing, know how to communicate, know their loadout, have that added firepower, know when to give ground, when to charge, all of that, because those things are all force multipliers that allow a small number of well-trained humans to take on a much larger number of zombies. As far as larger hunter units, I would actually recommend a more diverse number of loadouts. So heavy on medium infantry or medium skirmishers. Have at least one squad support, whether it be a heavier skirmisher or an actual dedicated heavy. Have recon, whether it be light skirmishers who can do the recon duty or actual dedicated recon. Definitely you're going to want a sharpshooter or two to watch out for the supers that you are intentionally drawing to yourself. All of that could be filled with, various degrees of skirmisher, but you also might actually go with having the more specialist units because they're often going to be better at one particular job. So the medium infantry is really good at just pop, 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 taking out the zombies as they come in. Heavies are really good at hitting the horde that's charging and either scattering it or just dulling the charge so that the infantry can then hit it. But like I said, with the diversity of the skirmisher loadouts that I recommended, you really can fill all those roles fairly well. Specialization allows you to have the one thing that you focus on and are able to do it really, really well. If you practice enough and you've tried all of those different roles and you're really familiar with your loadout, good skirmisher loadouts will allow you to be every bit as good in any of those roles as a specialist could. And that's really kind of the important bit is, as a skirmisher, you're going to be in the thick of it and you need to be prepared for that. You don't have the protection of 150 humans in one large column. You're going to be in smaller units probably, or you're going to be in a larger hunter unit, but you're going to be pulling all of the zombies and you need to be able to deal with that. But quite honestly, if we end up with a human victory at any of the big events this year, it will probably be largely a result of good hunter units making it possible for us to complete the missions that will then allow us to actually win. So I look forward to seeing you on the battlefield. Bangarang!